Hi, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. Last time we covered Castlevania, a story about the Belmonts hunting down the creatures of the night. Today, we're doing another Hunter of the Nightkin, that being Vampire Hunter D. Created by Hideyoki Kikuchi? God, I can't tell if I ever pronounced the name right. The story follows the dumb peel named D, as he journeys throughout the world of the post-apocalypse of 12,000, and also fights vampires who basically rule the world, or have, as their numbers are dwindling over time. As of the recording of this, there has been over 30 books, and the most recent one came out this year. Yeah, he's still doing them, and has always still done them every so often while in between projects. He's also writing. He's also tried his best to try to expand the series out from just the books into many other forms, like OVAs, movies, manga, and today's format, games. Sadly, there's only ever been one based on the movie Bloodlust, which is just a great movie. Like, I'm not even going to stop for a moment just to explain why you should watch it. Just look at it. It's so good. I don't need to justify my opinion about this. It's just that good. Go watch it. In any case, the movie was based on the third book, Demon Death Chase. Ironically, very little demons. Unless you count some characters, but yeah, we can get into that later. The game was made by Victor Interactive and, okay, I really don't know anything about them because they barely released any games in America that I would particularly know. They made a lot of fishing games and the River King games that I've heard are pretty good, but I've never touched them. Maybe one day, just for the sake of trying them out. But sorry, my sphere of knowledge here is very limited. So let's talk about why I wanted to do this video. Well, simply put, a while back I was hanging out with my bro, and I recommended watching Bloodlust. I thought he'd never seen it because, well, as much as this movie's awesome, it's also a little out there, like, not really mainstream. I could not have foreseen him actually seeing it. And well, during that night, we saw the movie, and then I remembered, oh wait, there was a game about this, and like, I decided to myself, hey, why not cover the game? Might be worth talking about. And that's how this video happened. Plus, when I was looking at all the other reviews, I also noticed none of them really mention anything about them books, so hey, I've read the book. So why not talk about the book as well? Talk about the weird oddities and differences. And here we are. Now the only thing I need to say here is welcome, and this is the review for Vampire Hunter D for the PS1. The game begins with a scene from the movie that shows D being hired to do the job. And here's a weird fact I learned after the fact. The actors for the movie are not the same one for the game, since the game came out first. Yeah, that was a little surprising for me because you usually think that the other way around here, but no, just how it is here. Though strangely enough, some of the actors in this game would reprise their roles, like for example, Charlotte and Myers actors would reappear as the same characters. However, some of the actors who did the main characters would just do other roles. It's just something odd I found, and it's really weird. In fact, while I was writing this script, I found out that somewhere in development, they finished the dub first before the sub version, or the original audio for the Japanese version, and that got released first, which is really weird. But hey, that's cool. Just wanted to throw that out. It doesn't really matter, I just love throwing weird random facts like that out there for the fun of it. In any case, D is tasked to find the girl, Charlotte, who was taken by the vampire Meyer. And here comes a weird fact that comes from the book. You see, Charlotte, she is never named in the book. She is only referred to as the daughter. I am not joking to you. It's one of those things that make no amount of sense. Because why would you have a main character, or at least a central character, not be named? And in fact, another oddity? You know her father? Yeah, by this point in time, they would be dead. Yeah, they just died. It's really weird, and I'm not entirely sure unless I'm forgetting something from the first chapter explaining how the hell anyone's supposed to get paid here. I really wouldn't know. In any case, we then use some CGI, which is really rare in this game. Really sad because it does look good and makes the characters look really nice. As he investigates a scene that shows the Marcus brothers, also vampire hunters, having also came around to try to claim the reward as well, fighting off some gargoyles that were nearby, which are really cool looking. Again, this game has a cool CGI look. I just really wish that we saw it more. We then are shown the castle where the game will begin taking place. And I hope by the footage you can tell like, oh wow, this is going to be very similar to another game, that being Resident Evil. And the similarities don't stop there, as we're also going to have to deal with tank controls and fixed camera angle. Like I mentioned in the last video, I don't mind fixed camera angles only if they ever become a problem. And tank controls are not a problem as controls as long as, again, the game is designed around it. I like to mention that a lot because there's always been a demonization around these types of mechanics, and I'm just like, come on dude, they're not that bad. Or even if they are, that's just a problem with how they're implemented here, not with themselves. In any case, it is now up to you to explore the castle and figure out where Charlotte is and possibly save her if it's not already too late. Normally around here I would go on about what happens throughout the plot, but really I could just tell you this now. The game is mostly a truncated version of the movie. And when I mean it, it's mostly like the bare bones of it. Like, the brass tacks of what needs to happen happens, but otherwise, it's really the bones of what happened. The Marcus brothers are here, but they rarely say anything. Only Bogarth gets a line or two, Grubik has a minor cameo, Note is already dead, and Kyle is just being a PNG, the sick fuck. Oh, I'm sorry, if you read the book, you know why I'm saying that about him, which we'll get into due time. In any case, only Layla, Meyer, Charlotte, and Camilla matter to this plot. Which is fine, I'm just noting the lack of them to begin with. You know what I mean? I thought they would have been used as a way to make minor boss battles, but whatever. In any case, after the intro, you are fully thrown into the game as you begin exploring the area. This is here where we'll talk about the gameplay. The game is really simple, as once you begin exploring one of the rooms, you get actually a small cutscene to introduce your left hand's power. Yeah, let me elaborate on this guy. The left hand is somewhat of an assistant to D. He basically helps him in certain tasks that D is not well equipped to handle, like deeper mechanics of magic and just science in general. One of the things he can do is that after damaging a foe enough times, you can actually absorb them in order to charge up your soul gauge. That allows you to use two abilities, a special attack spell or a full heal. And let me just tell you straight up, the full heal is always better. I'll tie into that in a moment, but let's talk about attacking in general. D has a sword that he can pull out to do a free strength combo. I say that though, it's not really precise. Like, I have no way to explain this then. I'm not entirely sure how the combo works. And you might be looking at me like, wait, what the hell are you talking about? Isn't it just simple? I mean, yeah, but for whatever reason, sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes I could just hit one attack, then sometimes I hit 3, then 1 again, then 2. I'm not sure what's causing it. I looked in the manual, it says nothing about this. Some reviews out there have said it might be tied to the vampire gauge, which I'll explain right now. You see, after getting hit by an opponent's blood, you may absorb it and increase your vampire gauge. But that might increase over time in general, because not a lot of people would know that, because they wouldn't care to. I don't blame them. I'm just saying, let me tell ya, I'm not sure. But in any case, the manual says it's supposed to boost, well, D's ability. I'm not sure what in particular, because the game doesn't really give a really direct answer on what it's increasing. I always say in my reviews that I don't care for hidden mechanics, because for the most part, it's basically saying nothing to the player and just expecting them to intuit what the hell you're supposed to do. Which is just bothersome because they could have just put it in the manual at the very least. Though speaking of that, for one of the weirder reasons, one of the changes in this game was one of the scenes in the game. Remember that scene I just mentioned a few moments ago? That was made for this version, the American version, basically showing off this ability. Which, if anything, is a good consideration because it makes sure that players know that this is a thing that the player can use and should use it whenever they can. My apologies for that side diversion, I just wanted to mention it because it just seems odd where they won't explain that, but really, let's continue on. Basically, Dee's sword is really the only way to deal damage. Let me explain. You see, throughout the game you might find items strewn around the level, like potions, blood vials, or bombs. And you might be saying like, oh wow, maybe I can use these to fight enemies. Not really. More times than not, they're just more of a waste of time than to actually use, because something like the bombs take way too much effort just to use. Meaning they were just dead air to me and basically worthless to pick up. I mean, I still did, but that was just for the sake of, I don't want to see them all the time, and I got some problems when I see a pickup and I'm not picking it up. I don't like doing that. And the really only useful item to pick up is the stake. Mostly because I thought like, oh, these might be just a simple throwing item. No, they're homing missiles that deal a lot of damage to foes. And they'll be useful for one enemy in particular, but we'll deal with that in a moment. And this ties into my first real big problem with the game. The game is really simple. Like, that free hit combo is all you got, and there are no upgrades whatsoever in this game. And let me tell you, this game goes on for like 4 hours if you know what you're doing. And let me tell you, this game did not need to be this long. Because you see, we need to now talk about the level design and how drab it is. Like, in terms of pure aesthetics, I think this game looks really nice and has a good look and design to it. But overall memorability was not one of them. I actually got constantly lost throughout the entire game because of how samey things look. Like, you look at this hallway and can you tell me where I am? No, you can't, because there's literally another room that looks exactly like it, and unless you can find the map, you're already lost. And that's mostly because there's nothing in those individual rooms that are memorable, and I had to use the map multiple times just to remember where the hell I am. Because they don't look that different from each other, which Resident Evil maps try their best to look different from one another so that rooms don't blend into each other, even if they did at times. But that also ties us into the other problem. You see, a lot of these things in this map are really long. Like, there is a lot, and I do mean a lot, of nothing in between, and the hallways are really long. The Resident Evil mansion was very concise, and actually had a lot of shortcuts throughout the entire game, making you being able to really traverse throughout the game really well if you know what you're doing. That's why the game's so memorable, because it's all about figuring out the ways around the mansion. While here, you have to go out of your way for a lot of areas throughout the entire game. And you also have to just be careful not to just get trapped by monsters around you or dodging them, or risking encounter to actually handle them. While in here, D can just mostly ignore most enemies if anything. Not only is because combat is really simple, and thus most foes aren't even a problem, D can easily move around most foes without a problem. And once you realize that, combat just becomes this thing you do for bosses and no one else. Unless you're fighting against this one enemy here, who is ironically the hardest enemy in the entire game, bar none. I honestly cannot stress to you how much of an annoyance this one enemy is. Mostly because it's really strong, comparing most of your attacks, so it's like really hard to even hit them to begin with, unless you do it at a particular time in their attacks, which good luck on knowing that on the first go around. And just pray you never see two of them in the same room, cause oh god, they'll block for each other. Like, I cannot joke to you, these guys were harder than most of the bosses, bar none. And that's really weird. And talking about the boss fights in general, well, I think they're at least well designed in a sense, like there's something about them, there's at least elements to them that are interesting. They're mostly a gimmick fight where they have one interesting aspect to them, but after a bit they become tedious. Though to be frankly honest, they weren't bad, but they were just tedious. The only one that I actually had a real issue with was the Wolfman fight. Don't ask me why I can't remember his name. I think it was Marchasia? I think I can't remember. He runs around the area, but because of how the placement works, there's a lot of different camera angles and where he's basically off screen for a lot of them, which just makes it really annoying and one of the few times where the camera angles really become a hassle. Actually, speaking of the Wolfman, another oddity from the book, he was not in the book. Well, a version of him, the same name is used, but he wasn't a Wolfman in the book. He was actually a being sort of like the left hand. Though actually thinking of the Barbarois for a moment, only Benij and the Wolfman are in the game, and not Caroline. Yes, I remember her name for some reason. Go figure. I'm more confused on why. I really think they could have maybe used the section where you play as Layla and have her serve as a minor boss for her. Yeah, let me explain that. During one section, D is taken down for a little bit and is separated from the hand, and the hand basically asks Layla to help him out, and Layla agrees. And this section is where you can play as her, who has a gun, but the only drawback to her is that she has a limited range and is stuck in the plate. But in most cases, she's still really busted because she has a gun. She can just fire at everything around her. And you only play for her in this one moment, otherwise it's just a there thing. An interesting idea, but just a moment. Honestly, I could go on about a bunch of other topics of now, but really they wouldn't really matter because they don't really matter. Puzzles are barely a thing, and the only one I could call a puzzle is this music box that's only done once, well technically 2 times, but only one of them is actually required to beat the game. Though speaking of extra rooms, there's a lot of extra rooms throughout the entire game that you don't need to actually enter to beat the game. More times than not, they're just there for extra resources, but nothing much else. And there's also the platforming, which is just there. It's not bad. Like, I saw some of the reviews out there that say it's really bad, but really not entirely. I mean, yeah, you have to angle it a little more, but otherwise it's fine. I've seen worse. Way worse. This doesn't even touch that angle for me. It's just not a problem. Just time it out right. So let's actually praise the game a bit. I think the music's actually pretty good. It has some good variety to it at times, and the types of songs it uses for a lot of stuff are decent enough, even if the soundtrack is, if I'm correct here, shorter than this video. It's fine. There's some good music here, and the basic hallway music is really good in my opinion. Really good. And I kind of want to stop for a moment and talk about this now. I don't think the levels themselves are the problem, it's more or less the spaces around them, if that makes sense. Like, all those dead air rooms and just the amount of space walking in between, like, if it was cut down, or even better, just removed entirely, I think the game would be far more better because it would just mean you're doing more stuff in between getting to points. Because games like Onimusha have done these ideas well enough and shown that there is something there to work on. Also Soul of the Samurai, but I use Onimusha because nobody knows about this game. Ironically, it's how I met a lot of friends of mine. I'm planning on covering this game next year, I promise, because I want to talk about it, okay? Anyway, really the only problem I have with the game is that it's very loose. Basically, it has a bunch of ideas that could work well if it was more tightly focused on these ideas. And let's actually talk about the game's ending, and well, we need to talk about the plot again, and well, I need to say something now because, you see, I've been mentioning a few things here and there and said I would get back onto it, but let's actually talk about it now. And we need to talk about something first before we even talk about that. That being, well, if I'm being honest, I think I like the movie way more. Like, holy shit, it's so much better. I say that mostly because there's something in the book that happens way too often that it legitimately hurt my enjoyment of it. There were some cool stuff here and there, but when you see it, it's like, oh. But I don't want to say it because, let's be clear about this, YouTube would basically strike this video down and no one would see it. So I'm just going to reference something, and those who would get it can understand what I'm talking about. Okay, you know Berserk? It has a lot of the same thing I'm actually talking about, to the point that some people refuse to read it because they don't want to see it, and they don't think it should be used as a talking material. And I say fair enough to them. This is not an easy subject matter, and really, can you blame anyone? And while I think Berserk handles it well, because we'll get back into that in a moment because it will make sense when I talk about it, I don't think the book handles it all that well to begin with. And whatever you want to say about Berserk, you can at least say it handles women characters a lot better. Like, in this book, one out of the 3 women aren't even named. That's just dumb. And it's not helped that one of the other women characters is the victim of it, and it just happens way too often. And yes, that would be Layla, by the Marcus brothers, who are their actual biological siblings in the book. Yeah, that's why I was so glad that Kyle was a PNG and stuff. And yes, I want to note, it does include Gruvik. Yeah. The movie actually made them way more likable, and actually made them people for the most part, and it feels bad when they actually die. And like, you can see like why Layla's so into the idea of now, like, I gotta finish the job. You know what I mean? And you know, you understand why she keeps doing the thing, then the out of actual nowhere, oh yeah, I'm gonna stop doing this now, maybe marry that one guy she met in town that's not even in the book. I apologize, but you get my point. Sorry for bringing the tone down for a little bit, and if you didn't want to see this subject matter, I apologize immensely. So here's something actually more interesting. Carmilla. Carmilla in this game and in the movie are the central antagonist, but she's nowhere to be seen in the book. She's a non-existent character, though ironically, elements of her, however, were used in the books for the human-eating road. Yeah, it's a real big antagonist in one of the books. Well, very later on, but you get the point. And like any lore and history about Dracula isn't really mentioned, though he's more called the secret ancestor, who might be Yasakov, who knows? Or maybe some elder god, because those are a thing in this universe. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, let me just tell you, it can get crazy at times. It's why I'm a fan, but I'm just telling people, wow, this series can go all over the place. But in any case. One more thing to mention, because it's something I really wanted to mention. Okay, so in the game, and in the movie, there's this sword that they mentioned that Dracula used to seal away Carmilla. Am I like the only one who says like, hey, isn't that the sword from Final Fantasy 2 and 3 because he liked to use that design a lot? Or is it just me? Maybe it's just a me thing. Also, I totally forgot to mention this. I'm not sure why I forgot. It kind of is important because I needed to mention this. You see, this game also has multiple endings, and it's mostly all tied to Layla. Let me put it to you like this. See, they are all tied to her basically depending on how she lives, and what you do. Do you save her here, give her her gun, find the gun, and one other thing, but that's really it. All it does is determine what side of the ending you get. You get the good, bad, and just the normal ending of the movie. That's really it. And honestly, it could have been interesting, but like the rest of the game, it feels there. Like, to get this ending, you need to go out of your way for one section just to find an item that the game wouldn't normally let you see. So, good luck on that. But in any case, like I said earlier, as much as there's a lot of interesting ideas in this game, they're not handled well. The gameplay has a cool idea of being melee focused, but is not interesting enough to carry the entire game, nor the enemies worth fighting. The level design and whole area are interesting, but they're too boring and too long to really have anything worth of value to them. The story is just a truncated version of the movie, so I would ask why not just watch the movie. Could have added more things, added some cool ideas, but otherwise, it's fine. And that's at the end of the day the problem with this game. It's just there. Nothing's wrong with it, but there's nothing right with it either. It's a game that exists in this void of boring. The worst type of boring. The dull, been there, never coming back. I want to apologize to anyone who got this far and heard all that other stuff from the book. I want to remind you, I only mentioned it because I thought it was interesting to talk about, because none of the reviews talking about this game mentioned the book. And just wanted to mention that. In any case, next time, we'll have a cheerier game to play. Well, trilogy of games, as next time, we'll really need to get our game on. See you next time.